So I've been using Blender for quite a few years now, but just for side projects like modeling and some random animation stuff. And I've recently been able to use it at my job where I work for a game company and we make a game called Wizard 101. And your player character can cast these spells. When design and writing comes up with the description of the spell, we can either make storyboards, which are just static drawings, just to kind of show the sequence. And that's what I've done in the past. But what's really fun is to do an animatic. And this is more like a moving storyboard where we get to see the timing, we can play with camera angles and movement, and just kind of get a visual sense for the whole team as what the spell's going to be about. Okay. And typically they don't have a lot of color. They're just kind of like grayscale, but it just gets the idea across, right? And it's something we can crank out really fast and make changes if necessary. And so what I've been doing is using a plugin for Blender called StoryPencil. And this is by Antoniov. This is the website. StoryPencil storyboard tools, and I'm using Blender 4.4.3, and this version of StoryPencil is version 1.2, which it says it only works for Blender 4.4 and newer. Okay, so if you're using an older version of Blender, there's a link right here where you can get a version that works for your version of Blender. What we're going to do is come up here to Edit and Preferences, because first we have to install the add-on. Okay, and I'm going to go to Get Extensions, and up here I'm going to type StoryPencil, and I'm going to find it and enable it. You would just click Install over here if you don't already have it. And then if you go to Add-ons, you can search for it. Just make sure it's enabled, and you might need to restart Blender, okay? But once you have that, open Blender, and we're going to go to File, New, 2D Animation, okay? And this will put you in Grease Pencil mode. If you're not familiar with Grease Pencil, it's basically a way to do 2D drawings into a 3D environment, okay? And it immediately makes a grease pencil object, and it's called stroke, which we're going to rename that, and it creates a camera, okay? So everything in this collection is part of a scene. Well, let's go ahead and enable StoryPencil, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if we come up here to Draw and set up Storyboard Session, so if you notice it jumped us over to this video editing window, okay? And it defaulted to creating a scene right here of 48 frames. And basically, it's linked us to the 2D animation scene that we had. So if we come up here, we see base, which is the scene that when we create a new scene, it's going to reference this base, okay? And edit is the 2D animation window that we're going to do all of our characters in. It'll make more sense in a little bit. So it also gave us these tabs over here on the right. Okay, so if we come down here to StoryPencil, we can set the frame number to 100. And so any new scenes that we create, it will default to this. And we can give it a prefix like scene. We'll just call this the B scene. And a suffix, this tacks it on to the end of the name. We're going to call this version 01. So I like to export things out as MP4s, my Animatic. So I'm going to change this to FFmpeg, this file format, and container, I'm going to change that to MPEG-4. Okay, and let's go ahead and delete this scene and come up here and create new. And this will be scene 01 and hit OK. And so it created our new scene. And this VSE, it's a non-linear video editing system, kind of like Premiere or DaVinci Resolve. We can take these clips and cut them, edit them, arrange them in different ways. And each clip references our 2D animation workflow, okay? So let's go ahead and just come over here to the end and create another new one, and we'll call this scene 2. Hit OK. And so now let's come over here to scene 1, and wherever we're at in the timeline, when we jump to our 2D animation window to edit, the timeline will be right there, okay? So let's come over here to edit and see how it jumps us back, and we're on frame 36. If we move this over to frame 1 and we go back to VSE, it's going to be at the start of that clip. Okay, see how it moved the timeline? And the same for this clip over here. Okay, so let's go back to frame 1 and hit edit. And it also created 2 layers, lines and fills. And this is inside the grease pencil object, okay, which is called, right now it's called stroke.002. But let's name this something like B, okay? And I like to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this rough, okay? And so this grease pencil object, well, let's just open a scene. I think it makes more sense to just dive in there, okay? So let's go to this scene, don't save. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the VSE. So here I have 2 scenes created. I have one scene of a bee like flying in, and then it cuts to the flowers, and we're going to have the bee zoomed out, so he's going to be a little bit smaller. He's going to come into this flower, okay? So if I come in here to scene 1 and go to edit, my grease pencil object is called B01, and if I turn on this canvas, it's kind of like being able to draw on a sheet of glass, right? And so you can still animate the sheet of glass, but you can also animate on top of the sheet of glass. So I have a looping animation of his wings flapping, but the whole grease pencil object is moving in space. So if I go into 3D view, okay, so if you look down here, I'm just gonna hide my rough lines and my fill layer and unhide my rough. So this is the rough. We go back to camera view. Okay. And then I go into the lines layer and selected a different pencil. And then I go to fill and add the color. Okay. I'm going to select this B grease pencil and I'm going to copy it back to VSE, come over here to scene 2 and edit. And I'm just going to paste, Control V. So now we've pasted that original B in here, but now we can change it, okay? Because it has a different name. So let's rename this to B2. And the actual B object, I'm going to come in here to object mode, and I'm going to scale it down because I want it to seem like it's further away from the camera, okay? Okay, and his path is going to be a little different as well. So let's move him up. I want him to start up here, and he's going to come in, delete these, change my time range. Let's just go down to like 200. So he's going to come in to like right here. He comes in from screen left, and he kind of bobs down, and he bobs up. Okay. All right, so that's the B. And if we go into the 3D viewport, we see that he is right in line with those flowers. Do you see that? But I'm going to push him back a little because I want a little bit of parallaxing, okay, with the camera. So let's change the scale to this grid to 2. Just so we can kind of see where it is in relation to the flower. So let's push it back. Okay, let's push it back kind of behind the flower like this. Okay. And then we're going to have some parallaxing on the flowers as well. So like this flower 1, we can pull it forward to the camera. And it also has my rough drawing on it. But we're going to create a new grease pencil object. So let's come up here to add grease pencil. And what I like to do is I like to do the stroke because that way I can physically see where it is in my 3D space, okay? And so like this flower, this smaller flower right here, I'm going to draw it behind this big flower, but in front of the bee, okay? So let's come up here to edit and delete, okay? But our grease pencil object is still there, okay? We're going to name this flower 2 and go back into our camera. And since I already have the rough drawing, I'm just going to go to my lines and go back to draw mode and make sure I'm on ink pen. And I'm just going to draw a little flower down here, okay? And let's go to the color layer and come up here and get a gray material, which is already set, if we come over here, to fill with no stroke, okay? And I'll show you how we'll just fill this in real quickly. If you just click and start dragging around, you can fill this in. And if we want to push it back, we could make it darker. So we can come up here and click this and drag the color down. So now we have 3 grease pencil objects in here. We have the bee, flower 1, which has our rough drawing on it as well, and flower 2, which is this flower back here, okay? Right there. So now let's create a third flower. So let's come up here to object mode, add grease pencil stroke, and we'll place this flower in between the big flower and the small flower. You know what? Let's just push it way back here. Okay, let's go into edit mode, delete the stroke that it created. Okay, but our grease pencil object is still there. So let's go back to camera. And now let's go to draw mode, make sure we're online. We have our ink pencil. Okay, we're just going to do a little flower back here. Okay, I'm just going to keep it really loose and rough. So we're just trying to get our idea across. Let's go down here to gray and color layer. And let's color this one real quick. Okay. So now we can go back to flower 1 and hide that rough because we don't need it anymore, okay? But if we go into the 3D view, we can see all of our flowers. And now we can animate the camera. Like if we want it to kind of come around like this, we'll get a little bit of parallaxing with those flowers, and that might be kind of cool. So let's turn off the canvas. And let's see how we might be able to achieve that. Okay, so let's hit in to bring up our little window right here and view, camera to view. And now go to the camera. Okay, so let's come over here and hit K. And we're going to insert keyframe at location, rotation, and scale. So now let's come over here. As the bee comes in, we'll say 65. We're going to kind of rotate the camera around a little like this and just kind of zoom in. Okay, we'll just keep it real simple. Okay. And this animation stops at frame 65. So let's come over here and adjust our ending time to 65. Go back to the VSE and right click, update scene frame range, and move the end of this clip to down here. Okay, so let's go back to our scene and let's extend the time down because I want to add a little bit more animation in here. Okay, let's remove camera to view and kind of zoom in. And as he comes in, he's gonna like look surprised. Okay, so let's come up here, make sure we're on B, let's delete all of these keys. We can always add that back. Okay, so right here, I'm just going to start on the lines drawing. I'm just going to zoom in a little. Oops. And get an expression. Delete all this. Erase it. Okay, and so what we're seeing is the onion skin. And what's cool is you can come over here to data and you can play with the onion skin, like opacity, keyframes before and after, just like 2D animation, which I love. So let's switch to our pencil. Okay, our first stroke. Okay, so I'm just gonna, like I said, we just want to quickly get the idea in. Okay, so this is him seeing the flower, and he's like, ah, like, oh my gosh, I love flowers. Okay, and if he's too big, we can come up here to edit. We can lasso select him, and we can just scale down because he's slightly big. Okay, then we can move this up. Okay, so let's go back to pencil, and we're gonna do a new color layer behind him. I know I'm kind of getting all over the place, but this is just kind of how I work. Okay, so he's gonna, it's like, ah, all right. Could even like maybe make his eyes hearts. That'd be kind of cute. Ah. Okay, so let's go down here to fill and make sure we're on the fill layer. And let's just color him in real quick. Ah. Okay, so let's go back to VSE and extend this out. And right click, update scene frame range. Sometimes you have to do this to refresh the cache. Okay, so let's hit play. He comes in and all right, flower. Okay, and so like maybe at this point I'd want to zoom into his face, right? So I might create a new scene, come over here and do new. So don't be afraid to create as many scenes as you need because you can always move these around and clip and edit them, okay? So this is the new scene. I'm going to go into edit and I'm on my rough layer right here and I have a pencil, okay? If you don't have a rough layer, just go ahead and hit the plus sign and create one. Maybe this is him like, you know, a close up where he's like really kind of like freaking out, you know? He's like, maybe his fingers are in his mouth, like, ah, like, oh, this is so exciting. Can't believe can't believe there's a flower here. I need a way to show his teeth. Ah. Okay, wow, I do not like that. Let's try this again. Okay, let's start with the smile. And you can also erase, either dissolve, which is kind of a soft erase, or you can go to stroke, and it will delete all the strokes that you've created, which is kind of a nice, fast way. Okay. Let's try something like this, where we get his teeth in first. Now this might be his, fingers. right? Okay, so again, we just want like down and dirty and fast storyboard that we can pass on to the team, okay, and just get the idea across. So then on this, I might bump the opacity down on the rough and come in here to the lines layer and select the ink pen brush and just kind of clean this up a little. But I'm still gonna stay like loose and rough. Okay. The main thing is I want to see this smile. Okay, and it does help. It helps to make noises. What your character's thinking. Can't believe it. Oh. Maybe you still see the hearts. And maybe there's hearts all around him just to show that love. Okay, so go down to fill. Now we're gonna color it in. And we're gonna go back to our solid fill layer and color him in. And we're just gonna color these hearts in real quick too. Okay, let's turn off the rough layer. Okay, back to VSE. Okay, so he flies in, he sees it, and it switches to him all excited. I want to come down here on the StoryPencil tab, import render strips. I'm going to uncheck that. Render only selected strips. Okay, we can keep that checked. Select all of them and hit render. And this is going to output all three of these as separate files onto my desktop. And then what I would do is go into DaVinci Resolve and stitch these together and render out one MP4. Okay, so it rendered them out. So let's minimize this, bring in our clips. Here's our first one. I have mine to open with QuickTime, and let's open the second clip. And let's open the third clip. Okay, so here's the first one. And here's the second one. And the third one. Just make sure they look the way we think they're gonna look before we stitch them together. Cool, and so if I go back to make changes to one of these, like say scene 3, then I can just select this scene and hit render, and it will only update that one, okay? So I hope this helps you get started in making animatics in Blender. It's really fun, and until next time, happy animating, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.